to see what their issues are. But I will tell you the primary role of a member of the United States Congress in terms of activity in Washington, D.C. is to promote and vote for or against legislation that impacts the country. My number one priority would be to do what is in the best interest of the nation. That may very well put me in conflict with some of my friends locally, but that's the primary thing. Now, the good news is that probably 99.9 times out of 100, what's good for the country is good for Southwest Florida. So I don't think you're going to see too many conflicts that would evolve out of that. But I would have to say that my primary responsibility would be to work for the betterment of the country. And if that means making some folks back home a little unhappy, that's the way it would have to be. I will tell you that as your next congressman, I will be here to talk to you. I'll be here to attend forums. I will continue to work with organizations to help make life better in my community, and I'll use that office to do that. I will also promote policies that I think are in the best interest of this state, because quite frankly, most of the time, those are going to be policies that are in the best interest for the nation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neal?
I concur with Senator Saunders. Primarily, the United States House of Representatives should be in the business of making life better in all of the United States. Now, for congressional districts like ours that have grown so quickly over the past 10 years, sometimes I think we need a little leg up. And it would seem like maybe we could get an earmark here and there, but the earmarks have become so abused that it's almost distasteful to even talk about earmarks. So what I propose is a sweeping revamp of the Appropriations Committee that recognizes that growing congressional districts require more assistance in improving their infrastructure and maintaining their infrastructure than those congressional districts that are shrinking or just stagnant. Hopefully, when we vote along those lines, those congressional districts, be it the 14th congressional district here in Florida, or maybe a congressional district around Las Vegas, would get additional help that they so desperately need right now, while maintaining the best interests of the entire United States of America as the primary and fundamental goal.
Thank you, Mr. George.
Thank you. That's an excellent question. And looking at it from my perspective, I have a hard time figuring out what that is actually in the national interest would not also be in the interest of Southwest Florida. Now, I understand that there are situations where we could talk about the earmarks, which I've already signed a pledge saying that I will accept, or that I will make no earmarks if elected to Congress. There are a lot of issues that come up that affect us locally, but the question you have to ask yourself is, when these types of conflicts come up, is it really a conflict about what's good for the nation versus what's good for the district, or is it a conflict between what's good for the nation versus what's good for a wealthy minority of special interest in the district? And I think this is where the conflicts come up. We can look at a situation that happened recently that I'm sure most of you are familiar with, the Coconut Road scandal, which involved Congressman Donyon from Alaska and a few other players here that we know in the district. Is this a case where there was a conflict between what's good for Southwest Florida versus what's good for the nation, or is this a case where there was a conflict of special interests? And again, it comes down to a matter of making sure that we, the people of this district, are the ones being represented, that we are respecting the constitutional system of checks and balances that was established. Because, you know, the real genius of the Constitution is that it was designed to make sure that a class of hereditary, wealthy politicians never rules over the American people. And this is the principle that we have to get back to. And until we do that, we're always going to have these sort of local versus national conflicts that are really centering around the special interests of the local area, not what's actually good for America as a whole.
Thank you. Let me just clarify before we move to the next question. So even when it comes to bringing money back to Southwest Florida, is there no such thing as a good earmark? We'll go straight down the line. George, Mr. Hirsch.
Well, the earmarks are actually a very small percentage of the total appropriations, and I think the earmarks have become such a major problem in that the way that they're appropriated that at this point I believe the best thing to do is just to stand aside from the earmarks as a whole. This way we can reform the appropriations system in a manner that's more consistent with the American people need. I also think a line item veto would be an excellent thing to hand the president. It would go a long way towards restoring that balance of power.
Okay. Mr. Neal, any such thing as a good earmark?
I believe there are such things as good earmarks, and that's why I have not signed a pledge not to do earmarks. But I can promise you, if you'll elect me your next congressman, when I apply for an earmark, you'll know exactly why, and you'll be able to see who it actually benefits, and you'll find that the beneficiaries will be you, the good people of the 14th Congressional District.
Thank you.
Again, a good question. As long as there's an earmark process, I would certainly fight to get funding for the district. That's the system that we have, and I would participate in that. I would do everything I could to get as much money for this district that I could get. At the same time, I would argue that earmarks should be ended. Only projects that are fully vetted are projects that should be funded. And I'll tell you, this earmark process is costing taxpayers hundreds of billions of dollars a year. It's not a small ticket item any longer. It's huge. The $300 million bridge to nowhere is a perfect example of the abuse of the system. The system has to stop. But I'm not going to prejudice people in my district, the taxpayers in my district that are paying for these earmarks. I'm not going to prejudice you by saying I'm not going to fight for earmarks. I'll do everything I can to get earmarks, but at the same time, at the national level, they should be stopped. Line item veto, I think, is critically important. We have a situation where we have almost a $500 billion deficit, going close to maybe even $1 trillion deficit. I'm not talking about the national debt, which is at $11 trillion. I'm talking about the deficit each year adding to that $11 trillion debt. We can't sustain that. We need to tighten our belts nationally and get our spending under control. And the only way we can do that is to end the earmark process, to provide a line item veto, and to get a handle on this outrageous spending that Democrats have been involved in and Republicans have been involved in. It's not one party versus another. It's everyone in Washington, D.C. But I'm not going to prejudice my tax-paying citizens by saying I'm going to not have any earmarks. I'm going to have those earmarks, but I'm going to fight to stop the whole process.
Thank you. I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions.
When one of you lucky guys ends in Washington, you're going to find yourself the beneficiary of the Cadillac of medical insurance or medical care, the Cadillac of retirement systems for you and your family. Can you in good conscience feel that that is fair to the rest of the Americans?
Let's go to Senator Saunders first on that.
You know, the system in Washington, D.C. in terms of retirement has been somewhat repaired. It's not like it used to be where a congressman would serve for 2 years and they would have 100% of their salary for the rest of their lives. The issue of what congressmen can do with their leftover campaign funds, it used to be where you could save $1 million or $2 or $3 million in campaign funds over some period of time, step out of Congress and keep all that money. There's been some repair of that. I think that as long as we have a fair system, I will support it. And what we need to do is take a look at what we can do to improve the health care delivery of all Americans. And we talked about the single-payer system as an example of that. We talked about making the system simpler and eliminating some of these excessive costs that are costing us $500 or $600 billion a year out of this $2.3 trillion industry that we have. And so I would not be embarrassed to have a good quality health care system as a member of the United States Congress. I have a good quality health care system as a member of the Florida Senate. I think those things are necessary to attract good people to those types of jobs, and we need good people in those types of jobs. And so that's not a problem. The problem, in my view, is that we are not treating the rest of the American people properly in terms of making sure they have access to good quality care. We're not shoring up our economy to make sure that our savings are safe from these turbulent times. Those are the types of things that we need to work on. Thank you.
Mr. Neal?
And I'm offended too that the perception is that United States senators and United States congressmen enjoy a Cadillac plan. I wished it were different. I wish that not only would it not be true, but your perception would be different. If I'm elected, those things are in place, and I need health insurance just like everybody else does. I'm going to accept it. But I promise you this. If a bill comes across that contains an increase in wages or a bettering of the retirement or health care plans or other perks that inure to congressmen, chances are it's going to be buried somewhere inside of some other bill that is far more important than that one tiny issue. So I won't promise you that I will vote against it, but I promise you that if it's buried in that other bill and I vote for the bill and the bill passes, that I will refuse the increase in pay and will refuse the increase in perks until after the next election, when I can come to you and say, okay, remember that bill that was for energy or was for pharmaceutical drugs or whatever the bill was for? Well, it contained a little provision that gave me a pay raise or gave me a little better retirement. And I'm asking you to re-elect me because I think I've represented you good, but you need to know that if you re-elect me, I'm going to enjoy that extra benefit. And so my pledge to you would be to refuse the extra benefit until after the election following the passing of the bill that contains the change.
Thank you, Mr. George.
I think this is a situation very similar to what we just talked about with the question before about earmarks. How do you get rid of a problem if you continue to support the problem? In other words, how do you stand up against something that you yourself are using? Now, I don't think this is a perception issue. I think the members of Congress do have a Cadillac plan. And one of the things that I did very early in this campaign, one of the very first videos that I put out, is I have pledged not to take my congressional health care benefits until every single American is covered under the same system. And I'm not alone in this. There are several other people in Congress who have taken the same pledge. And again, there's no way that the people in Washington can represent the rest of us out here until they're living like the rest of us. Now, for me, not accepting health care benefits isn't much of a stretch. To be honest, I haven't been able to afford a real health care plan since 1999. But of course, if I get that nice congressional salary, then I'll be able to buy a private plan. But again, I want to make sure that what I am representing in Washington is the situation that we, the people of this district, are living through.
Thank you. Do we have one more question?
Gentlemen, has the line item veto been ruled unconstitutional?
Anybody want to talk about that? Oh, I'm sorry. He asked if the line item veto has been ruled unconstitutional.
And I personally don't know if it's been ruled by a court of law at this time. I don't know.
Does anybody know?
I certainly don't. I think probably the only legal argument would be that it violates some separation of powers by giving the executive the ability to line item veto acts of the legislature. But I would be surprised if that had been determined to be unconstitutional. I can't imagine why it would be. So I mean, I support the line item veto. I'll have to check to see if that's been ruled that way. I don't think it has been, and I can't imagine why it would be. I mean, for example, obviously the president vetoes legislation all the time. The question is, from a procedural standpoint, can they pick out line items in a budget? And I would argue that from a constitutional standpoint, it would not be invalid. From a practical standpoint, it may be difficult to get Congress to approve it because that gives an awful lot of power to the president. But I think it's something that's necessary.
Thank you. Anybody else want to?
No, I'm not aware that it was ruled unconstitutional. I know they tried this earlier in the decade, and there were some legal issues with the bill as it was presented, but I don't think it was actually declared unconstitutional.
And did I hear you say that none of you are in favor of the line item veto? Is that correct?
I believe we're all in favor.
Oh,
of
I'm
the
sorry.
line item veto.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I misspoke. You're all in favor of the line item veto.
Yes.
Is that
Yes.
correct?
No,
Okay. Thank you.
I don't support the line item veto.
Okay. You stumped us, and you left time for one more question. Do we have one? Bev's got one. Thanks.
Illegal immigration subject. It's been brought up. what are your proposals to change this problem, to improve the situation? It's affecting the operation of our hospitals and the emergency rooms and the police enforcement, the jails, and many features of our economy. What would you specifically propose to improve the situation?
Mr. George, will you start?
Yes, thank you. We have to recognize when we're talking about the situation with illegal immigration, essentially what we have is we have a supply and demand problem. Not only do we have a supply of illegal immigrants coming over the border, but we also have a demand for illegal cheap labor. And until we address both sides of this equation, we're not going to have any lasting solutions. Now, we've been given a slight reprieve on this issue because, unfortunately, as unemployment goes up, the number of jobs that are available for the illegal immigrants is going down. But this by no means solves the problem. I think in the end, what we need to do is we need better laws more than we need walls. And I say this for a couple of reasons. First of all, when we talk about the fact that the majority of the illegal immigrants in this country didn't cross the border illegally, the majority of them came here legally and then overstayed their visas. So we need a better enforcement procedure in place to make sure that that's taken care of. Secondly, on the employment side, we need to make sure that we have a good quality database available to employers so that they can vet their employees and make sure that they're legal. And for those employers that hire illegal immigrants willingly, we need to make sure that there's some level of enforcement in place. And the other issue, a lot of people talk about this notion that we need to build this wall across the U.S.-Mexican border. While I certainly agree that we can do a better job of ensuring physical security, I think the notion of a wall and the siege mentality that goes with it is the exact opposite of what America is all about. It's the exact opposite of what the American immigrant has experienced. And historically, whenever a society walls itself off from the rest of the world, that is a sure sign that that empire or that way of life is about to come to an end. And I don't think that the American way of life is anywhere near coming to an end. So we need to get away from this idea of walls and actually pass a few better laws and enforce the laws that we have already on the books when it comes to immigration.
Thank you. Mr. Neal?
I think that we need to change our immigration laws just a little bit. If I'm not mistaken, when our country was young, we were desperate for new citizens. And so anybody that came to this country was welcomed with open arms, and if a child was born here, that child was an American citizen. I believe still, if a child is born here, that child's an American citizen. I'd like to change that now that our country is fully populated, to say if a child is born in the United States, to parents who are traveling here either legally or illegally, the child takes the nationality of either one of his parents, the child's parents. What that will do is that will prevent us from having what commonly called anchor babies that make it so difficult for us to try and deport folks who are illegal immigrants. You know, you've got a child here who's an American citizen, and we don't want to ship mom and dad home because we feel for that child, and we should feel for that child. But if that child is now a citizen of the country where their parents are from, either one of them, doesn't matter to me, the parents get to choose, then that child will no longer anchor that family in this country. In addition, what I'd like to do is provide an identification process, a national identification process that's very secure, either by using DNA or some sort of biometric identification. We really have a national identification right now. It's called a passport. Now, you wouldn't have to use your passport to cross state lines to go to Raleigh in the Carolinas, or to Atlanta, or to San Francisco, or wherever you want to go, but there would be times when you would be required to show your passport. For instance, when your child is born, here's my passport. I'm an American citizen. My child is an American citizen. How about when you buy a weapon? Here's my passport. I'm eligible to bear arms in this country. How about when you get a job? Here's my passport. I'm eligible to work in this country. Now we really have a mechanism by which we can hold the employers accountable for hiring people who are eligible to work. And under those circumstances, we can put serious fines on the employers who blatantly hire folks who aren't eligible, and that will begin to clean up the problem and take care of the illegal immigration system.
Thank you. Senator Saunders?
Thank you. I certainly believe that times have changed. We can no longer permit unfettered, unrestricted illegal immigration to this country. I do believe we need to build a better wall between Mexico and the United States. I know Mr. George said we don't need better laws, we need better walls. Don't need better walls, we need better laws. I think the laws are on the books. Quite frankly, I think we need to do everything we can to stop the flow of illegal immigrants into this country. I think it's basic for our national survival. Many of us, my grandparents came to the United States as immigrants. They came here illegally through Ellis Island. And there's nothing wrong with a workable, legal immigration system. That's what we have to have. We can permit people to immigrate to this country. We have to do that. But we have to do it in a rational, legal manner. We need to know who's coming here. We need to know why they're here. So that's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is the issue of people coming to this country legally with visas, tourist visas or student visas, and overstaying those visas and never leaving. Many of the 9/11 terrorists came to this country legally from Saudi Arabia, and they simply overstayed their visas. Now, you'll be surprised to know that we don't track people that come here legally with a visa as to when they leave. Well, if we don't know that they've left, then how do we know where they are? And so we need to give those folks a certain amount of time under those visas to stay here. We need to know where they are, and when their visas expire, we need to make sure that they leave. That's what the law is. We don't need to change the law to do that. We have to provide more funding to make sure that when someone comes in on a visa, they're fingerprinted. When they leave, they're fingerprinted, so we know that they've come and left. And if they don't leave, then we need to find where they are and deport them. That's what the law already is. I support stopping the flow of illegal immigrants. It's sort of like the old saying that if you're out on a boat and you spring a leak, the first thing you do is you stop the leak before you start bailing. And I think we need to stop the leak. We have people that can come to this country that want to join gangs. They want to engage in human trafficking. They want to make methamphetamine. They want to prey on society. We have to stop them from coming here. It's a fairly simple matter to do that. We don't need new laws to do that. We need to enforce the laws that are on the books. I don't think that results in a siege mentality at all. I think it's just basic to our survival as a nation. But we do also, along with that, have to develop a workable legal immigration system that works for all of us, works for our businesses, and promotes growth in our population, because we still need young people coming here. The sad truth is that those of us that are here aren't producing enough children to grow our population. And so immigration will continue to be a necessary component of our economic survival, but we have to do it in a rational way. I think there are enough laws on the books. I think it's a matter of stopping the bickering and getting down to doing a few simple things to bring some rationality to the entire system. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes our candidate forum for the candidates running for U.S. House District 14. On behalf of all of the residents of Shell Point and the Academy at Shell Point, I want to thank you three for attending our forum. We're so happy to have you. Also, we'll remind everybody that the election day is Tuesday, November 4th, and early voting dates and locations can be found in the program you were given when you came in. So please vote. You can stick around and ask these gentlemen questions if you have them, but do vote and do hold them to the promises they make. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
See you guys. Hello.
This is the evaluation sheet? Okay, very good.
Not keeping you in line, right?
Wrong question.
24-hour news on all these cables. They have to have substance. They have to have program. So nothing to your campaign.
Yeah, where's tiresome?
We have through my
Okay, well look, this is not binding at all.
what do you do with the 12 million here?
That's a tough question. You know,
You can't throw.
exactly.
And frankly, I don't think there's much of a problem in the schools and their hospitals. I think they contribute more to the country.
But you know, Bert raised an excellent point. The fact of the matter is we need that immigration in order to remain viable as a country. You know, I do a lot of work with the Kovach and Immokalee workers down in Immokalee, and so I mean, I really am completely sympathetic. You know, you have a mix of legal and illegal people down there, and they're the hardest working individuals I've ever met in my life. And you know, you want to make sure that we don't have a system where we say, you know, even if it's under the table, we say, hey, come to our country, contribute to our economy, and then when we don't want them anymore, we throw them out.
The point you made too about the fact that we're happy that more people stayed on after visas rather than people coming across the border. And I agree with you. Guatemala is an absolute disaster. Thank you.
Thank you. It's nice meeting you, sir.
Nice to hear it.
Okay, I think we got a.
By the way, I can tell you now, I'm in favor of moving
Okay. Here's the first race, and you see who the second name on the first race.
the interview.
Right now, I thought they were doing Saunders first. All right.
Did you have a preference on which like you want to be wearing?
Put two.
Okay. So you probably know the drill here, huh?
Yeah.
You want me to clip it?
If you want. No two people have the same microphone choice for locations.
Do you want me wearing this too?
Okay, yeah, if you put that on.
Let me just check your mic one more time.
Okay.
The back for it. Well, thank you for taking the time to meet with us today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Just a few questions for you, and what we're going to do is we did film the entire thing, and then we're going to air that on TV on our show. And yep, we've been doing interviews with all of the candidates, and we'll be airing those on TV as well. Just about 5 minutes.
No problem.
And I won't be a part of it, but I'm just going to ask you the question, then if you could just repeat the question back to me in your answer.
Okay.
Is that working, Dan?
Is he switched on as well?
Yep. You're not getting number 3? Shouldn't matter.
You guys are doing a better job than the networks here.
Are you getting him?
Wish we could get an interview with every channel.
Yeah.
Who's there and that's not?
Which one, mine or his? When edited, each interview will be around 4 to 5 minutes. So just keep that in mind.
Okay.
Is it
Let me
working?
see yours a second.
Check.
See, the only answer had battery problems.
Dan, is his microphone working? Is his microphone working?
No, I'm not at either one of them right now. Just go ahead and let it work this through. Don't shoot that. We are underway now.
And we've been doing this with everyone, so it's not just you, but if you could say your name into the camera and then what you're running for.
My name is Jeff George, and I'm running with no party affiliation for the Florida District 14 seat on the House of Representatives.
Wonderful. And then every other question that we talk, you and I are just having a conversation.
Okay.
So if you could tell me a little bit about your background and why you're running for office, and again, when you respond, if you could rephrase that in your answer. So your background and why you're running for office.
Well, I was born in Ohio, and I've lived here since 1973. And with the exception of the 5 years that I spent in the U.S. Army, I've been a resident here my whole life. And the reason I'm running for office is when I look around at this district, I see that we are not truly being represented in Washington, D.C. I see that we have a corrupt system of campaign financing. I see that we have a congressman who doesn't spend enough time in his district, and that's got to change. And the only way that that can change is if we change the system. And so that's what this campaign is all about. What we're doing with our campaign is a little bit different in that we are videotaping everything that we do, and we're making that footage available online so that we have complete transparency and accountability to you, the people of this district.
And then if there are two major issues that you could pick as your hot button issues that you're going to address right away, what would those be?
Well, I think the biggest issue that, of course, everybody is talking about right now with good reason is the economy. And that's what we really need to address. And the way that we address that isn't simply by bailing out Wall Street and the big money interest, but by addressing the needs of the everyday people here in the district, the everyday people on Main Street. So in addition to trying to create more liquidity in the banking system, we've also got to make sure that middle-class working people have access to good salaries, that they have access to real universal health care, that the pensions and Social Security available for everybody, and that we're doing all we can to create incentives for good jobs.
And if elected, what will be the very first thing that you'll do?
If I'm elected, the very first thing that I will do is probably throw a big party. Everybody in the district is invited. Now, in all seriousness, my top priority is changing the way that business is done in Washington. So if I am elected, we're going to take what we're doing with jeffgeorgeforcongress.com, which is basically a prototype for how we want to present ourselves, not only as the people of this district, the voice in Washington, but also their eyes and ears. We're going to take that and we're going to flesh it out until we have a good system where everybody in the district can reach me either online, on the phone, however possible. Then I'm up there all the time, and hopefully it'll be interesting enough for everyone to want to watch.
And now, the Shell Point residents, is there anything in summary that you would like to say to them and why they should look to you as the candidate?
Well, I think there's a lot of talk this election, like there is every election, about Republicans and Democrats. And I don't know about the folks here at Shell Point, but those are two words that I'm really sick of hearing. And I think that it's important for people to remember that many of the problems that we have in Washington, the problems we have with the economy, the problems that we have with the war on terror, these are short-term problems. But in the long term, we have a long-term systemic problem with the way that business is going to be, the way business is done in Washington. And until we change that, nothing is going to change. So I would urge everybody to go out there, to look at the issues, not concern themselves with the parties, and vote on the issues. Because as long as you vote your conscience, you will never, ever be wasting your vote.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks.
I'm going to grab your microphone.
Okay. Oh, you mean I don't get a free mic?
Not today, maybe next time.
Don't you have enough of those?
Actually, no.
Thank you so much. Pleasure meeting you. Take care.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for coming out, Shell Point.
Do you have a card?
I do, in fact. And there you
go.
Thanks.
Thank you.